Austin environmental activist Paul Robbins joins the Plutopia podcast this time, discussing his latest project, the Austin Environmental Directory. We examine the impacts of water scarcity, the growing strain of data centers on local resources in the Texas electrical grid, and promoting sustainable regional food production.
The directory has a chapter in it on low-cost solutions that will get you through a power outage. So in terms of survival, that might help a bit. I've written in other past directories, and this is on my website still, about alternative energy and clean energy that can be used in buildings, water conservation that can be used in homes. There's all manner of things that can be done on an individual level.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Plutopia News Network podcast. I'm your co-host, John Lebkowski, and I'm joined by other co-hosts, Scoop Sweeney and Wendy Grossman. And we are the Plutopia News Network. We do this podcast every week. We do have a Patreon, which you can find on our website at plutopia.io. So if you love the podcast, of course, consider subscribing via Patreon, and you'll never lose track of any of our podcasts. This episode, our guest is Paul Robbins. For nearly 3 decades, the Austin Environmental Directory has been one of the region's most essential guides to environmental issues, sustainable products, and local advocacy. Edited and produced by Paul, who is a longtime environmental activist and consumer advocate, the directory's latest edition for 2025-26 focuses on the theme of resilience, addressing everything from backup power during grid failures and clean energy research to looming water shortages, food security, green cleaning products, and the work of Austin's environmental organizations. As Robbins notes, or as Paul notes, I should say, this edition gathers information not reported anywhere else, synthesizing complex topics into a user-friendly resource for anyone concerned about Austin's environmental future. Today, we're talking with Paul about the stories behind this year's directory, the challenges ahead, and what it means to build resilience in a changing world. So welcome, Paul. So happy to have you here.
I got the better deal.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but we're very happy to welcome you. And my first question for you is about the cover. You have a lighthouse against the northern lights, which is a beautiful image, but does it represent something? Is it metaphorical?
Of course, it's metaphorical. Sometimes the world seems hopeless. And when I was looking around on the web, I sort of went back to my childhood days. As a kid, I was always fascinated by lighthouses. And then I started finding images of lighthouses with the northern lights behind them. There's actually a whole genre, and I probably looked at several hundred pictures, and I got rights to reprint several of them, of the better ones. And one of the better ones is on the cover. It was taken in Iceland with the green colored northern lights behind it.
So can you tell us a little bit about, well, 2 things really. One is why you've made this issue about resilience. I mean, I kind of know, but to hear it in your own words. And the other is just kind of what's involved in putting this publication together every year.
Well, okay, regarding why resilience, uh, the theme just sort of came to me. I was originally going to do the theme on solid waste and um, plastic recycling and organics recycling. It seemed at the time the thing to do. But then Winter Storm Uri happened and the grid crashed. And I wrote several stories about that. And things eventually crystallized to where I said, I'm not going to write about solid waste and recycling. I'm going to write about resilience. I was actually hoping to add in yet another story about buildings that are resilient, hurricane resistant. I'd like to say boast and say hurricane proof, but there's always something that'll get it. Hurricane resistant buildings, tornado resistant buildings, that kind of thing. I was hoping to find the bandwidth to write that, but then I had a physical accident and I had to get the book out. There was no more time left. I hope that I pick up resilient buildings in yet another story, just not in this edition. And what it takes to deal with this is someone truly obsessed. I just have a very stubborn streak in me that is going to see a project through if it can get done. The last edition, this is the first hard copy since COVID, since 2020. I had written enough stories to print a book really 3 times the size of this one, but they're posted on the web. And I tried to update the stories that, or at least get them get them in shape for a current printing, and write a few other stories that were new, such as the one about agricultural resilience in Travis County. And then put it all together. I proofread most of it at least 5 and maybe more times. Other people proofread it. There were about 300 graphics, and I had to edit many of them, find them and then edit them. There were a lot of late nights. I live alone, so people didn't have to hear me cursing and sometimes screaming at the walls. But it ultimately got done.
Well, I'm a big fan already. I spent the week looking at the copy you sent us, and I've survived a lot of things that required resilience. I lived in the Bay Area for a long time, survived the big 1989 earthquake, the Oakland Hills fire that destroyed 1,000 homes in my own neighborhood in the Oakland Hills, and the Bastrop fire, which destroyed most of Bastrop County. I had a tornado just down the street that put us out of commission for electricity for a couple of days, and of course the freeze we had no water, no power, and a very cold couple of days. But I think that what you did is amazing, and your experience in the freeze. What was your experience, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I was lucky. I lived near a hospital, and the way Austin dealt with the freeze was to leave essential life-saving circuits on and turn off everyone else. Other utilities had what they call rolling brownouts, where you would be cut off for 6 hours and then your power was restored. In Austin, if you got cut off, you usually stayed off. But I kept electricity virtually the whole time. I did lose water, and I dealt with it by filling up my recycling bin with snow and then bringing it in. I did have gas heat, so bringing it in, melting it. It was too bitter to drink, but for all other purposes, it worked. I had a little bit of bottled water for drinking and cooking. That's how I dealt with it. But everyone who lived through it has a story to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I just realized we've known each other for 50 years. Gee. But anyway, so I mean, we had a bathtub full of ice. I mean, we were carting snow in and filling the tub and used that for various things. We did find one place that was open, and driving around, we found a liquor store that was open, and that was helpful. But we really didn't have as much water as we probably should have.
Is some of this a sign that the government doesn't work very well? Because, I mean, the last time we had the water shut off, a truck magically appeared in the street offering people big bottles of water. And I assume it was either sent by the water company or the local council or something.
I think they did that here, didn't they, Paul? Weren't there some places where you could pick up water?
Well, during the Winter Storm Uri emergency, yes, there were bottled water giveaways.
I mean, there were,
So that's correct. But I remarked several times in the directory, I tried to call out all the local heroes and all the good things they did. And I went on to say that if an entire society is designed for incompetence, an army of heroes will not be enough.
Yeah, and this may take some time, but I'm just wondering if you could sort of outline all the various forms of incompetence that fed into the problems that we had locally here in Austin and also throughout the state.
Well, I did write an entire article describing how Winter Storm Uri crashed the grid, and talked about all the contributing factors, or most of them. So for those that want to get into the weeds on technical issues, they can. But that was part of a bigger series called Backup Plan. It was originally 5 articles on the web back in 2021, and I merged them into 3 articles for the print edition, trimmed them to 3 articles for the print edition. And the main theme of that was that if a system is an electric system is poorly operated, then some people are going to figure out a way to compensate. And it goes into great detail about people who have the money and the survival instinct to buy backup generators or backup electric batteries.
Yeah, I saw your analysis of that, millionaires are doing fine. Average people may be able to afford to buy themselves a very limited, like maybe a Jackery system or something like that. But it really is, it really is, it points to the income inequalities that we
And
experience
it's going
as
to
well.
get weirder. Now, I don't know your news sources, but on a daily basis, I am seeing articles about the huge spike in electric demand from AI, from data centers, and from kleptocurrency. And I'm just, it comes out to where it's not identical, but similar to the dystopian science fiction epics like The Matrix and Terminator. It's humans versus machines. Now, it's not quite like a robot's coming after you yet, but it's like they're coming after life supporting energy. And it's driving up costs for the average person. And unfortunately, the current administration is just pouring gasoline on the fire, and some state governments and some utilities are trying to find a way to manage it or throttle it back, but it's a severe threat. So you have that layered on to the already daunting problems of more extreme weather from global warming. It doesn't look good. It doesn't. There's no future in this.
See, I'd have said it differently. I would not say it was machines versus humans. I'd say it was the companies' interests against humans, because it's really not about the machines. It's about the companies that are building them.
Well, yes, it is, but the fact is they're building machines. So we're both right, okay?
Yeah, the whole problem that it's being exacerbated by local governments who have been offered deals. Meta's particularly bad about this, saying we will bring in a data center, we'll build a data center, and we'll create all these new jobs for your unemployed. And these are small towns that are already suffering. And just that carrot and stick thing they're doing is saying, well, we'll give you these great jobs if you let us build a huge, electricity sucking data center.
Yeah, and the electricity we need for our refrigerators goes up because of it. It's it's for another book.
Well, some people are arguing that small nuclear uh, facilities, very small, not like the ones that we've seen in the past, would be a potential solution to this, that you could build a small nuclear facility that would power the plant. And then there's other thoughts about, you know, making them as dependent as possible on renewable energy. But there's no question that they're sucking up a tremendous amount of energy.
Well, no question. And would you put that in the form of a question?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess one question for you is, other than, so let's assume that we all agree that these facilities, these data centers are going to be built, they should be built, that we all accept that AI is the wave of the future. What would be, from your perspective, what would be the ideal way to manage the energy footprint of those facilities?
Well, I don't assume that all data centers and AI centers and cryptocurrency centers are inevitable. So that's my first answer. But to the extent possible, John, you've known me for, as you said, almost 50 years. So you would know that I'm not that I'm an anti-nuclear activist, that I believe in renewable energy to the greatest extent possible. And even if the data centers were, even if all these data centers and AI centers were not a factor, we would still need to convert the grid. I do have a story in the directory that talks about some of these technologies, but it talks about clean energy in a kind of a different way. Austin has what many other utilities have in another form. It has a green energy product where you can pay more money on your bill and believe that you're getting pure renewable energy. In Austin, it's called Green Choice, but there are products like this in many utilities. The problem is that in Austin and in many other utilities, what's happening is obsolete because they're funding intermittent wind and solar energy that can't produce on demand. And they can't produce on demand whether it's your refrigerator or an AI center. And so I have created a premise that we should take this money and invest it in low-risk research and development so that we can fund energy storage batteries and new types of clean energy that are dispatchable on demand. For instance, I discussed batteries that are made literally out of table salt. I discussed geothermal energy that is made from basically it's based on fracking technology, except instead of fracking for oil and gas, they're fracking for heat, which can be used to run generators. So these are This is a story that I would encourage energy geeks to look at very closely. You can kind of apply the principle anywhere, although what's written is written based on Austin statistics. It's really a worldwide situation where we need to come up with dispatchable alternatives, since this current federal government is cutting way back on most renewable energy. Maybe local utilities and cities and states should compensate.
Are those cuts impacting research into the development of storage?
To my knowledge, yes, but I can't give you statistics. I can tell you, interestingly enough, this is very ironic. The one thing that the current administration has not cut back on in renewable energy is geothermal. Why? Because the fossil fuel industry likes it. They can use fracking to create heat for power plants instead of fracking for oil. And you'll find that veterans of the oil industry who have a social conscience have diversified into this.
Yeah, I think if you own mineral rights to a particular area or location, that includes geothermal. Am I correct?
Probably.
So another question about storage: is there? I mean, I can remember a couple of decades ago when I was more plugged into clean energy and sustainability than I have been recently. So I don't really know the answer to this question, but I remember back then the question of creating batteries to store energy produced by either wind turbines or solar cells, that storage hadn't got very far, and that there wasn't a good way to store that energy, and you just had to transmit it on demand, sort of, or not on demand, but transmit it as it was created, the opposite of on demand. Has that changed over the past few
Some,
years?
but not enough. Lithium batteries have gone down in price about 70% in the last 10 years, and they've gotten safer. And they have also gotten a little more durable than they used to be. Still, they're used for niche markets, because even after all these improvements and all these cost reductions, they're still real expensive. And, for high-priced peak power, well, yeah, but for everyday use, no. And so I tried in this article about developing breaking technologies to talk about some of the alternatives to lithium: flow batteries, salt batteries, thermal batteries, and then geothermal, of course. And then don't forget that clean energy is more than just production or storage. It's also conservation. It's also very using efficiency. And I talked about some of the developing technologies there as well.
Yeah, a lot of these problems, the AI centers, the crypto centers, the even the fracking that's going on, all relate to a problem that I don't see a good fix for, and that's water. There's a lot of problems here, especially in Texas, of not enough water, not enough clean water. That's what do you see as the future of good, clean water?
There's too many people using too much water while global warming is getting worse. The future, if it continues on this track, is dark and dry. I have an article in this edition charting that Austin could be dry in as little as 15 years with one really bad drought. And yes, water is a huge problem. And I believe that some of the data centers and electronic centers are using they're using groundwater rather than municipal water. And eventually they're going to end up competing with the locals. In another directory in 2013, I wrote an edition on water as the theme. And I pointed to a phenomenon called water colonies, where these rural areas are going to become subjugated to big cities' needs as their populations grow. Their water will be usurped. And I went on to comment that, well, maybe these water colonies should organize so they could at least get a better deal for their resources. That may sound cynical, but I was trying to just look at the ground as it was. And these water colony regions can be challenged with data centers as easily as cities, and maybe much sooner, depending on the location and the situation. And you know, it's becoming an increasingly small world. There's just so many places that haven't been invaded, and that's my point. That's my answer to you.
Well, out here, I'm in the rural part of Bastrop County. We sit on a big aquifer, and we just had a battle that was recently fought over Austin Water wanting to store water here in underground areas as a backup water source, I suppose. And that was rejected because people, this area has been pretty much sucked dry by other people who have water that they're selling to other counties, other cities around. And it's becoming hard to get good, clean water, here in Bastrop County. So I don't see the need for the cities to be, sucking out, water that is supposedly for our use.
Of course you wouldn't, but I mean, I'm not trying to justify it, believe me, but I am trying to say that, you have a living entity that wants to grow, and they're going to try and get the resources to do that. Interestingly, the Austin aquifers aquifer storage reservoir proposal was originally estimated at about $365 million. And as originally proposed, it would only store about 2 months of emergency water. The theory being that in flush times, Austin would send river water to the aquifer storage for use in drought times. But there was only about 2 months of drought time there. And when I quizzed somebody at Austin Water about the price, they said, by the time it's done, it'll be $1 billion.
Ouch. Well, that's a lot. And
Well,
I guess one of my concerns is that
to paraphrase the late Senator Edward Dirksen, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money.
well, one of my concerns is that water will become unaffordable or difficult to afford. That we'll have to pay huge amounts of money for it.
Well, but that's okay because it'll thin out the population, right?
Yeah, I have a theory that there are some people who don't really care too much whether we all drop dead.
The
As long as
problem
they can water their grass.
everybody thinks that everywhere in Britain is wet and therefore Britain has no water problem. But I suspect you know already, Paul, that the southeast of England is actually quite dry, and is getting drier. And so one of the cities around the world that is at risk is London. And this, so far, recent governments don't seem to have done very much to improve water management. And right now, Margaret Thatcher privatized the water companies, and right now there's a sort of crisis going on with these private water companies because they've underinvested and handed all their money to shareholders, and it's a big mess. And my particular region, the water company that serves London, is at risk of collapse and may be nationalized soon.
Huh.
Oh hell, the free market will fix everything.
Well, that doesn't seem to be likely how it's going to go. They've been trying to put together a rescue package for a while now, and what seems more likely is that the government will end up taking it over, which might actually be a good outcome because, at least then they would be at least theoretically acting on behalf of the people who need the water rather than the shareholders who just want the money.
Understand, but then again, as you know, government-run utilities are more accountable, but they're also have their own bureaucratic problems.
What do you think about desalination? Because Corpus Christi started a big project. They're of course on the Gulf, so they have a lot of salt water they could use. But is that a realistic solution
For data centers or people or anyone?
for water in general?
It's expensive. I mean, the reason that they're just investing in it now is because they've probably tried most other things. And now they're that desperate that they'll look to this high cost alternative, which is also very energy intensive, by the way. Interestingly, I was reading a newsletter a couple of days ago, and I read about this company that's going to supply data centers with water literally taken out of the air. And I mean, this has been done, since several thousand years ago, people devised dew catchers. So people have always known how to harvest small amounts of water saturated in the air. But to do it on a data center like scale is a formidable task. And so I looked up the company and looked up their projected energy use for their system, and my jaw almost dropped. I cannot see how they could afford water at that cost, but maybe if they're desperate, they can.
It's kind of frightening to think about. I keep thinking about, I look at Austin and I see how many people are moving here and how much construction there is of new domiciles, especially these huge apartment complexes they're building these all over town. So we have a ton of people coming in, and every person who shows up, of course, is a new water consumer. And I question whether, I mean, is there anybody in city government who's tasked with kind of keeping an eye on that? Is there is
Yes,
there do they ever tie construction permits to the concern for, you know, water availability?
yes and no. To be fair, Austin's water utility does monitor growth, does projections. What they don't seem to do very well at this point is project for um, catastrophe. They've actually done some academic exercises, let me be fair, where they've tried to figure out what global warming would do over a period of decades. So I don't want to completely discount their efforts, but they're not going to go at this point, they're not going to go before the city council and ask for a moratorium on growth because we can't handle this. They're just not. John, I think you were in Austin in the early 80s, and you might remember the fiasco of Williamson Creek wastewater plant, where it was built as a temporary sewage facility, and they kept adding more and more customers on the same poorly built under capacity plant, to the point where it started spilling sewage into Onion Creek and into the Colorado River. There were lawsuits. There were emergency purchases of ancillary sewage equipment. At one point, they were actually trucking sewage from one site to another. They were that desperate to keep growth going. And no city manager wants to hear that, well, we're out of capacity. We're just not going to be able to grow for a few years. That's just not how they think. It's not how they work.
That's a bunch of shit. That's supposed to be a joke. Nobody's laughing. Okay, I will move on. So what do you think? Is there anybody, do you have any like confidence in anybody within our city government who's got a sense of the problem and a sense of of a solution? Or any sense at all?
I believe that Al Gore made a comment to a question once about political alternatives. And to paraphrase him, he answered, "You are the alternative. Do not wait for politicians to do something. You need to do something." That's how I would answer that. That's probably not the answer that you want or need to hear, because of course we want our institutions to be far forward thinking and progressive. But I mean, depending on the issue, we have some good people. Is it a majority at this time? No.
I mean, if you say that you're the source of the solution, what can I do as an individual?
Not me, you, the royal you.
Okay, but what can people do? What can, in general, people do to address this problem?
Well, that's going to take us another 3 hours to carefully deliberate on. I'm not sure you have that time right now. The directory has a chapter in it on low-cost solutions that will get you through a power outage. So in terms of survival, that might help a bit. I've written in other past directories, and this is on my website still, about alternative energy and clean energy that can be used in buildings, water conservation that can be used in homes. There's all manner of things that can be done on an individual level. To take collective action, it needs activists to demand something. For instance, and I know I'm steering this back to the directory, but if people get inspired about the article on research and development of renewable energy and storage, they could start demanding it. They could put together a collective proposal and go before council and ask that it be done. I mean, you never know till you ask, you never know till you work on it. And similar things can be done with really any kind of environmental cause. We wrote a little bit in there. I and a co-author wrote a little bit about agricultural self-sufficiency. The food forest in East Austin started with a dream. And after many years, it turned into something real. And now they want to expand it further. It takes a group of people committed over a period of time to developing, championing, and selling a proposal to funders. Be it funders could be private or public, but this is how it's done. I mean, I started my crusade in the anti-nuclear movement for funding from city government for clean energy. And there were enough other like-minded people, and we got a group of council members elected who would support it. And we have one of the longest running conservation programs, institutional conservation programs of its kind in the country today.
Well, all these things we've been talking about, these problem areas, create a similar thing: waste. There's all sorts of waste in it, whether it be nuclear waste, wastewater, plastics. What is the future of the human race if we don't deal with all the waste that's being created and not dealt with?
Well, that's a leading question that you already know the answer to. It's like, what do you want to know the answer to? I'll be glad I'm not dodging the question. I'm just asking, can I clarify this?
Well, I was just in general, how does the human race deal with what's looming? Because there don't seem to be any solutions for plastic waste. They don't have any way to deal with the waste products of the old nuclear power plants. So is there ever going to be a movement to deal with this on a global scale?
Well, I hope so. You've talked about two things, so let's use them as examples. Nuclear waste, going back to my early days as an activist, they've never found a long-term storage site because no one wants it in their backyard, at least in the United States. And so what does one do to stop further waste from happening? Fortunately, there's not a lot of nuclear plants being built in the United States, right, for the last few decades, because they're just simply so expensive. There are, John alluded to small modular nuclear reactors in an earlier statement, but those are highly, they're not commercial, not to my knowledge. And the ones that have been built have been very expensive, and several of the companies that tried to build them have all but quit because they're so expensive. The long term of nuclear waste would probably need to have some form of deionization, which currently is extremely expensive. I am not in any way current on technological developments in that. Plastics is more personal because they're everywhere in people's lives. There are a few companies that have been trying to, and I've read, successfully developing plants that can break down plastics into their elemental constituents so they can be reused. I was hoping to write about that in this edition of the directory, but got deterred by resilience. So the wastewater, there are entire states in this country that use enormous percentages of wastewater as recycled water, where it's purified to a minimal standard and then reused for some purpose, such as agriculture or non-potable water in cities, things like landscape and toilet flushing. So in Singapore, they actually have a recycled water product that is so pure they're using it in their microchip plants. As you all probably know, water has to be super, super pure to be used in chip factories. So I'm speaking extemporaneously and I'm kind of jumping around. There are solutions to some of these things. They're not happening fast enough, and any sentient being would probably be building a fallout shelter right now, and filling it with Bibles, waiting for Armageddon. I'm trying to be humorous. Probably
Are they
not.
planning to burn them for heat or what?
Maybe. I'm probably not succeeding very well. The point is, we are in a predicament and it's getting worse. And the only hope that I can offer you is that we're here and that we can work on things and that we can maybe fix some of them.
Yeah, there was quite a bit about our reliance on non-local food sources in the directory, and I've thought about that a lot. Um, and you mentioned a little bit earlier the food forest at Festival Beach. I assume that's the one you were referring to, but I'm I'm just kind of wondering, like, what happens if we're completely isolated and there's no way to ship food in from the outside? We're pretty much screwed in that case, right? And Austin
Let
is
me,
not
I'll
unusual in that
address,
regard.
John, I'll address that. I do want to answer maybe a concern that Wendy has. I'm not promoting religion. I am, in
No,
fact,
no, not.
let me finish. I'm an agnostic personally. I was just trying to come up with something that was kind of humorous, maybe not succeeding. The Regarding food, um, yeah, we are. There was a time when food wasn't imported from around the world, where every region was its little island, or bioregion anyway. And much of the food that was consumed came from that region. And with modern agriculture and with fossil fuels that allow easy transport, we've gotten very, very far away from it. But there are tens of thousands of fallow acres in this area. If we figured out how to use them correctly. And I don't know that Austin would ever be completely self-sufficient, but we could certainly grow much, much more of our sustenance here than we do now.
There's a woman I encountered a couple of years ago who plans food security. I think she works in Birmingham. And one of her more difficult proposals is, if you were building a supply pile as a to ensure that there would be enough food in case of catastrophe, I think her first move would be to eliminate junk food because there's no real nutrition in it. And she quite understood very clearly that this was a very difficult sell to people. But it's just not what you would put in your store of And during COVID, I was sort of looking at pictures of supermarket shelves on various social media sites and thinking about this, because you'd see these shelves filled with junk food, and you'd think, people are actually hungry. Wouldn't it be, and look at all this wastage.
True. I'm not going to argue with you. It's like, okay, there's the Sustainable Food Center in Austin has been training low-income households how to properly prepare meals and nutritious meals for several decades. So it's not like this kind of it's not like what you're saying hasn't been thought about and practiced. What we need is more of it.
Yeah. Hey, we have reached the end of our hour, and I just wanted to make sure you have an opportunity to let us know how people can get, especially people who are outside of Austin, can get copies of the Austin Environmental Directory.
The hard copies will be distributed at various places. A couple that I will call out are Wheatsville South, Wheatsville Co-op South, and Half Price Books.
So thanks so much, Paul.
You can stay in touch with Plutopia at plutopia.io. On Facebook, look for @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.